Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
By the Russian hoax. It's a hoax, okay?
So, Ambassador, which is it? Is Russian meddling a threat to our democracy, or is it a hoax?
Look, I know that there's this narrative in the press that there's a disjunction between the president and the rest of his administration. I got to know Eugene McCarthy, the late Democratic senator, very well. He was a client of mine in Buckley against Vallejo. He's an iconoclastic guy. He used to describe the press as a group of birds sitting on a telephone wire. One would fly off, and then they'd all fly off. And that's what this narrative, I think, is all about. The president knew exactly what was going to be said at that press briefing on Thursday. He's the one who directed it be held. It came as a result of a National Security Council meeting we had held the Friday before, where the heads of the operating agencies and departments and the four who attended the press briefing on Thursday and others told the president what was doing. He felt it was important that the American people hear directly from the people responsible for election security at the federal level, hear what they were up to, at least in a non-classified environment. So that's why we had the briefing.
Because they're saying this is a clear and present danger, that Russia did it in 2016. They're continuing to do it now. You have the Secretary of Homeland Security with her hair on fire saying our democracy is in the crosshairs, and then you have President Trump saying we're being hindered by the Russia hoax. That's not the press making that up. That's anybody who looks at it has got to see a difference there.
I think what he's saying by the hoax is the idea that somehow the Russians directed and controlled his campaign or direct and control his administration, that there was some conspiracy or some violation of U.S. law in 2016.
Russian meddling. He's handed down an indictment of 12 military intelligence officers of the GRU.
And there's no question that that's going on. That's what everybody said on Thursday. The hoax is the idea that the Trump campaign was the beneficiary of a concerted effort together with the Russians to affect the 2016 election. As to that, I don't think there's any evidence publicly. But everybody who participated in the press conference Thursday agreed, as has the president on several public occasions, that the intelligence community assessment of Russian meddling in 2016 is valid.
But one of the most powerful ways that Mr. Trump can try to prevent any meddling in the 2018 election is to stand up in public and call out Vladimir Putin and say, knock it off. I want to go back to Helsinki and to the joint summit news conference there.
I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his trial today.
I know you say that it was the first issue, election meddling, that President Trump brought up with Putin in their one-on-one meeting. But why not stand there right alongside Putin with the whole world watching and say, we are not going to stand for any more meddling?
Well, as the president said, he misspoke at a subsequent point in the press conference, and that he intended to say that just that. He had a statement issued the next day that I think made clear where he stood on the issue. And as I say, you can't read any motive into what he did other than his deep concern about Russian election meddling than to put the 4 operating heads and myself out for that press briefing. The whole point of that was to show what his administration was doing to counter Russian meddling and other broader influence operations right now.
But even in Kristen Fisher's piece about the rally last night, he talks about meddling, and he said there were a lot of people involved. There was Russia, there was China, there was North Korea. No, there wasn't. It was Russia that was interfering. That's who everybody's been focusing on. That's who you focused on in your briefing.
Right. There's no question that Russia was the principal violator in 2016 and that their activity this year puts them in the lead, although, as people said, activity so far at least is down from 2016. But it does not exclude the potential for others to meddle, and the broader issue that I think FBI Director Christopher Wray talked about in particular of influence efforts that go beyond the specifics of a particular election. And I think that's very troubling, too, and something we need more focus on.
It is Tuesday, the 7th of August of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. That's right. Well, oh yeah, a little bit of hot paprika, Hungarian hot paprika, makes all the difference. All right, just a scant, less than a dash. Okay, well, John Bolton, he's kind of a crazy guy, but he's got enough on the ball, I guess. He has that I don't know, at times an academic, understated power there. We'll call it that. But it's a pseudo-academic. Let's be clear, okay? And John Bolton is out there trying to make things right because, well, the guy he's working for, well, let's just put it this way, the horse that he's hitched his cart to is kind of, I don't know, going off the trail a lot. Let's go over here. Oh, we're going to teeter along the cliff's edge. And it's John Bolton's job, along with many others, to go out and tell the community, don't worry, the payroll will be safe in our hands. And I don't know. It seems like a failing attempt to me, John Bolton. All right. Well, and the big question once again is, how can John Bolton know that Trump was not the beneficiary of Russian help in 2016? He wasn't there. How would he know? Yep. Well, it's all predicated on lies. What else? Hey, out there in the news today, Wilbur Ross, maybe Wilbur Ross could be going to jail. And I've let people know, yes, indeed, Wilbur can still wear the slippers while in solitary. They'll let him. Because, he's entitled to that. Yep. So, $120 million. I think that's a small estimate. A tiny estimate of what actually was grifted out. When you're the bank president or VP of a Cypriot bank, skimming off the top, you might as well skim off the bottom too. Maybe some in between. They do that. Well, it couldn't have happened to a more weird guy. Yee. Oh, boy. And there's so much more going on in the world, we had to decide to cap it and make a show. A curated show, yes. So what else is on the menu today in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, construction companies are buying Fox News ads to hit Trump on the infrastructure bill he promised. Remember that? He promised an infrastructure bill. Where is that? A for-profit prison company threatens an anti-ICE group with a lawsuit for statements made by an 8-year-old girl telling the world exactly what they do. Yeah, they can't be blamed. Anyway, it's sort of like when Oprah had the show about mad cow disease and the U.S. beef industry sued her for defamation. What? Yeah, because it hit their sales. You can't do things that will, impact the bottom line. That's unconstitutional, according to these types. And, speaking of which, Wells Fargo apologizes. How many times have they had to apologize in recent years? Well, they're apologizing now after hundreds of their customers lost their homes to foreclosure because of what Wells Fargo called a computer glitch. Oh, sorry, can't do anything about that. After the break, we move to the chef's table where a Michigan cop jailed an 80-year-old great-grandmother because her medical cannabis card had been expired for almost 2 weeks. Hauled her off to jail. Yep. Sit in this cell, handcuffed, bitch. And from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to Michelle Obama, Democrats aim to reach a new kind of swing voter. Yeah. Talk about the forgotten man and woman. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice to the rightish of the page the chat room link. There might be people in there right now, so do engage. Kelly Lincoln, Roaring Girl, monitors that, but she's probably still on a train. So I contacted her yesterday, and she was still en route, I believe, unless she hadn't actually gotten on the train, which means she's still on the train. So she'll, if she's not able to check in as regularly as she normally does, she will be there. So do that. Check in to the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com or the contribute donate buttons. We are unable to do this without you. Thank you for your generosity. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. Also on Facebook, Kelly and I ostensibly take care of that. I say ostensibly because I think Kelly's the one that's doing it mostly. Thank you. And you can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. The show notes and links diary I post on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. And I can be found there as Justice Putnam. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. Just type in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy or get something close to that. It'll show at Cookbook West. Though we are on Facebook as West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy because Zuckerberg wants all your banking information so he can better, market to you and market you. Oh boy. And you can find the show or as a podcast on Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. I go on and on about, and rightfully so, because I think life is beautiful. I think we're damn lucky to be living. And I have this, this idea. It's not a belief. It's sort of just a little idea I've had for a considerable time. That, and it might have a little bit of tidbits of Krishna consciousness in there a bit, maybe, in that the idea of the cycle of birth and rebirth and how you go through different levels of existence until you can, finally get to the Godhead. You might start off as a tiny, tiny little organism and then work your way up through all the hierarchies of life, as the Catholic schools I went to would call it, until you reach a state of consciousness that you are next to the Godhead. So it's kind of an evolutionary thing with that. But I always had this little belief that, we're lucky because, in this maelstrom of chaos, order was achieved, no matter how Rube Goldberg-ian it could be, to get to the point where we have not only like a beating heart and arteries and we can, locomotion, we can move around and we can think. But not only can we think, you achieve a state of consciousness of knowing, or is it just accepting? I haven't decided on that one yet. But the point being is that for all of this chaos to form into a sort of order and then to have consciousness, what luck we have. And so to stop that just seems so, I don't know. I mean, how long is it going to take? Another few billion years? I don't know. So, when we die, of course, we do have a sort of existence. I mean, the atoms and whatnot are still vibrating and, jerking around in the subatomic level. And then maybe, possibly they form in some sort of what could be an entity again. I don't know. Now, this long-winded explanation of my idea of how lucky it is that we are living, and to shorten it just seems, the effort involved over how many billions of years to make you, and me, and our dog, is that as beautiful as life can be, the brutality of life always brings me back, well, to solid ground again, because, this order was formed out of a maelstrom of chaos, we shall say. But chaos and the order achieved is still so damn brutal. My mom's little rat dog, I love her. She's like one of these little Scottish Terrier poodle types. And, not an accessory dog that you can fit into a purse anymore. So, but, just a tad bigger. But, I affectionately still call her a little rat dog. And she was yapping by the car outside last night and trying to get under it, which, I don't normally see her do. And I looked down, and of course, there was some sort of dying life form underneath there. I couldn't quite tell what it was because I turned my head away. Brought the dog inside. And then I tried to avoid it. I tried to avoid the issue at hand. I wanted it just to die in peace, or as peaceful as it could be. And then after a bit of time, I went out there to take care of it. Because I'm a human being, it's in my way. And it was some sort of newborn thing. Could have been a squirrel, I don't know, could have been a crow even, I don't know, out of an egg, dropped somehow. It still had the placenta. So I don't think it was a bird, some sort of mammal, small. And it was still lolling around and moving its head. So, little baby's imprint, was I mommy? And what did I do? Picked it up with a flat shovel and threw it in the garbage. Mommy. So, let me I want to quickly read a piece by Barry Lopez that I have as a pinned tweet on Twitter. So if you haven't seen it, do. And when you do, if you want to follow me, that would be fine. But I'm always reminded of this. And Barry Lopez out of Arctic Dreams wrote, "How is one to live a moral and compassionate existence when one is fully aware of the blood, the horror inherent in life? When one finds darkness not only in one's culture but within oneself? If there is a stage at which an individual life truly becomes adult, it must be when one grasps the irony in its unfolding and accepts responsibility for a life lived in the midst of such paradox." We'll be right back. about that bit of moroseness in the morning, but hey, I try to be macho, but sometimes I'm just a sensitive guy. Alrighty, well, let's get on with the story about construction companies attacking Trump, essentially, for saying, hey, you promised an infrastructure bill. Where is it? Well, of course, Congress has to put it together. But he hasn't submitted any ideas except for his wall, like that's infrastructure. Well, they're angered. Oh, this is by Eric Bullard, by the way, out of Share Blue Media. Angered by Trump's complete failure to pass the massive infrastructure spending bill he promised, companies that make construction equipment are targeting Trump directly by buying ads on Fox News. And Fox is selling them. The Association of Equipment Manufacturers is airing a 30-second ad starting this coming Monday next week on Fox and Friends and other programs Trump is known to watch. It's the cornerstone of a Mission Not Accomplished campaign urging Washington to make upgrading public works a priority. Yeah, well, that doesn't help Trump. He has to get his share. Are you going to kick anything up to him to do it? But by running ads on programs Trump is known to watch obsessively, manufacturers are making their message to Trump personal. This is weird. They got to talk to the president this way. Would this be considered lobbying? I wonder. The kind of spending that would stimulate the U.S. economy is badly needed. The Society of Civil Engineers has estimated that planned spending on U.S. infrastructure over the next decade is $2 trillion short of what is needed. Well, you know, when you want bridges to fall so that the Ruskies can take over, hey, you can't have things too good. People won't want to give it up. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interject that, but none of what he does or doesn't do makes sense. Oh, well, like so much of Trump's legislative agenda, instead of passing laws, the White House remains mired in constant scandal, and there's virtually no chance that a bill to pay for road repairs will be advanced prior to November's midterm elections. That means key infrastructure programs are stalling, jobs are not being created, the U.S. economy is losing out. I guess they're going to need some Russian help again. Large manufacturers like Caterpillar are becoming just the latest sector of big business to realize that Trump's campaign promises are not worth anything. They won't be the last either. Alan Pike from Think Progress brings us this next offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Yes. Well, apparently an anti-ICE group made a ad of sorts, a public service announcement, with an 8-year-old girl essentially describing what goes on in an ICE facility. That Geo Group, remember them, private prison complex that was on the way out until Trump came back and Sessions came along. They are suing this anti-ICE group for really the statements, the inflammatory statements made by an 8-year-old girl that is just far, far above the norms that this group, Geo Group, is accustomed to. They don't want you to know what goes on inside because it's proprietary information. The legal threat is odd on a number of levels, not least of which is that one of the group's highest profile successes to date would seem to involve putting money back into Geo Group's pocket rather than harming its bottom line. Yes, Alan Pike, I already mentioned that. The state Democratic Party in Florida recently agreed to stop taking donations from companies like Geo after pressure from the group after pressure from the group, taking one potential line item off Geo's anticipated expenses. The state parties in New York and California have made similar commitments. But the strangest of the argument in the letter that the Geo group sent to this anti-ICE organization, in the letter is far more fundamental and almost nitpickingly existentialist in nature. The letter's core logic is that Geo group cannot be accused of caging people and separating families because while their staff and material are used to perform those tasks, the driving willpower behind them is governmental. If that seems like a familiar and unpersuasive argument from security service personnel connected to state conduct widely derided on moral grounds, that's because it's a rationale with a long history. As the Dream Defenders, the anti-ICE group, noted in their response letter, it's akin to the so-called Nuremberg Defense preferred by Nazi functionaries after World War II. Remember that one? An order. I was just following an order. An order is an order. I had to follow the order. And Hannah Arendt called that the banality of evil. They were just doing their job. Sorry, people go to jail for just doing their job. Of Think Progress brings us this last offering in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. You know, Wells Fargo has been saying sorry a lot, but this is just the latest sign of his many scandals to have potentially destroyed the lives of his customers. Yeah, they had to say sorry, little computer glitch, and you've lost your home, and we can't find it now. Sorry. So no word on if there's going to be any recompense for this computer glitch by Wells Fargo. And let's not forget, Wells Fargo also had that scam where as sales incentives, people were compelled to make up fake accounts, fake credit card accounts on people's, against people's checking accounts or whatnot. Little old ladies like my mom and your mom getting taken. Well, my mom unfortunately didn't get taken, but you know what I mean. They were preying upon those who probably wouldn't say anything. And now a computer glitch in which people were promised loan modifications, and after the housing crisis hit, some of the safeguards that were implemented were fail-safe systems within the computer when someone was due or qualified for a loan modification. They would be put through the process. Instead, this computer glitch kicked people out of their homes when they didn't know that they had any problem, even when people were up to date on their loans. So, I guess sorry is going to be good enough. Or maybe they could give them a toaster. Let's get to our break, all right? And we will come back and go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Glad You Bothered. Sorry to Bother You is a wonder. The trailer I saw makes it look like a lighthearted, quirky comedy about race in the workplace, sort of a black Office Space. But it is much more than that, so much more. Writer, director, musician Boots Riley, the wonderkind of the hour, has presented us with an increasingly surrealist, disturbing satire that looks at economic stridation in America today. Set in an alternate but very similar Oakland, California, Sorry to Bother You shows us an increasing corporate slave society where the rich elite live above the rules and thrive on the exploitation of those beneath them, a group which has swallowed so much humiliation and abuse that it has become their bread and butter. In this world, social mobility is only possible through one's ability to throw morals and compassion aside and debase oneself in joining the exploitation club. To this end, we meet Cassius Green, our lead character with a conflicting name that simultaneously brings up the nation's social warrior Muhammad Ali and underscores how much pursuit of profit is deeply embedded in him. Therein lies his conflict. He doesn't want to be bad, but he wants to live better than he does. Cassius is 4 months behind on his rent to his uncle, who is behind on his house payments, a struggling person among struggling people. So we're rooting for him when he gets a telemarketing job. And here we have part of the brilliance of the movie. We become complicit because we don't want Cassius to blow his shot, even though we see that his climb involves him doing more and more horrible things. The story and screenplay are so strong here. The movie is fun and wry with a great soundtrack of music mostly by Riley's band The Coup, but I warn you, it hits a little too close to home, a little too well to be laugh-out-loud funny. Sorry to Bother You, a sardonic title if there ever was one, offers such a stinging indictment of modern America that it's a wonder this movie got made. Thank goodness it did. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. In the most recent podcast, we discussed how baby bats learn their calls from all the other bats in their crowded colonies. And we mentioned in passing that songbirds usually get tutored directly from their dads. So how does that avian system work?
At about 25 days, the father starts singing, in many cases, directly to the juvenile.
David Metz, a geneticist at the University of California, San Francisco.
That sort of is the onset of what's called the sensory phase of learning, where they incorporate information from their environment.
What Metz and his team wanted to know was how much of a baby bird's future musicality is influenced by that tutoring, an environmental factor, and how much is written in their genes. So they studied Bengalese finches, which sing like this. The tempo of that song appears to vary according to a finch's genetics, so they tried training baby finches with different genetic tendencies, fast, medium, or slow singing, on a synthetic finch song, made from a library of different types of song syllables.
So these are they'd be tonal downward sweeps, so, or sort of broadband noisy ones like shh.
But when baby finches with different genetic backgrounds were trained on the resulting tune, the training didn't stick. Instead, the greatest predictor of their singing tempo was the way their fathers sang, which they'd never heard. So their genes seemed to be in charge. But then Metz flipped the experiment, exposing genetically similar birds to actual live birds that sang fast, medium, or slow. And that live training appears to have been compelling enough to override the influence of the bird's genetics. So that genetically identical chicks sang tunes fast, medium, or slow, depending what their tutor sang. The results are in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The study suggests that the right kind of schooling or environmental influences might be able to overcome baked-in genetic influence on certain traits. And Metz says this push-pull of nature versus nurture might hold true for humans, too.
We're moving very rapidly into a period where genetic data is easier and easier to collect, and an understanding of these kinds of gene-environment push-pull interactions and how they impact ultimate phenotypic outcomes is going to be important in understanding things like, even, say, cancer susceptibility.
Because that, too, has both genetic and environmental factors. But no word yet on whether the genetic influences of an off-tempo human father can be conquered with enough training. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics from the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Social disorder after the Revolutionary War was caused mainly by economic conflict between farmers and merchants. During the American Revolution, farmers borrowed money to meet the demand for food for domestic and foreign armed forces, along with civilian demand. At the end of the war, farmers could no longer sell as much of their produce as before, but the people who had loaned them money demanded that they pay back the loans. At the same time, state governments demanded high property taxes from farmers to pay off debt caused by fighting the British. Without funds for repayment, farmers' property was seized and auctioned off. Those unable to pay their debts were imprisoned. High inflation made matters worse for the newly freed states. The fight for freedom from British oppression seemed to have been futile to the farmers and others being bankrupted and imprisoned. Some decided to burn down courthouses, since records of private debts and public taxes were held there. And there, too, trials of bankrupt people awaiting debtors' prison were held. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Special counsel Robert Mueller's star witness took the stand on Monday in the trial of former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, who faces 18 charges of tax and bank fraud predating his time with the campaign. Manafort's former associate, Richard Gates, who is cooperating with the special counsel in exchange for a potentially reduced sentence, offered dramatic testimony against his former boss.
I just stepped out of the courtroom where the testimony was absolutely riveting. All along during this trial, the defense has been saying that Rick Gates embezzled money from Paul Manafort, and there was no allegation that the government has ever made that took place. Well, it turns out that Rick Gates did do that. He admitted it on the stand, and he said that the only reason the government knew about it is because he volunteered the information. He was essentially faking expense accounts, causing money to be wired from these overseas accounts that both men use that were outside the reach of U.S. taxes, and he said it was around a couple of $100,000 that he admits now stealing from Mr. Manafort. And he said this as part of this kind of ritualistic process that you see with cooperating witnesses, where they get up on the stand and the prosecution starts grilling them about all the crimes they've been charged with, all the crimes they're admitting to. And Gates is admitting to everything. He said that he was indicted with Paul Manafort on bank and tax fraud charges, and he is guilty of all those charges. And then he said he's guilty of other conduct, including this embezzlement that the government didn't know about. He talked about writing a false letter in an investment scheme and some other lies that he told in unrelated situations. He even talked about violating the terms of his bail when he was 15 minutes late for a curfew. Why is he doing that? Because prosecution does not want one thing that the defense can raise that the jury doesn't already know about from direct. They don't want any surprises when Gates gets up there on cross. They're trying to build his credibility. They introduced him and pointed out that he worked for Paul Manafort as a protege for 10 years. He actually started as an intern right out of college with the former firm of Black, Davis, and Manafort. And he took on increasing responsibility until he was essentially doing Mr. Manafort's bidding, including wiring money from overseas accounts. And in the process of that, he is saying we committed tax fraud, we committed bank fraud together, and Mr. Manafort was directing that.
The defense is expected to argue that Gates embezzled millions of dollars from Manafort and masterminded the firm's financial fraud schemes. Manafort maintains he is not guilty. His trial could be sent to the jury by the end of the week. As expected, the United States reimposed sanctions on Iran on Monday in the wake of Trump's decision to withdraw from the nuclear deal signed in 2015.
Iran's president is warning America will regret reimposing sanctions on his country. U.S. President Donald Trump withdrew from the 2015 Iran nuclear deal in May. The first round of renewed punitive measures are now in effect, and they cover the purchase of U.S. dollars and trade in gold, metals, and automobiles automobiles. In November, more damaging sanctions against oil exports go into effect. And the move puts Washington at odds with the UK, France, Germany, Russia and China. Hassan Rouhani says China and Russia have indicated they won't abide by the measures.
If someone is willing to use a knife against an opponent, stabs that opponent while simultaneously saying that we wish to establish a dialogue and converse with one another, the first requirement is for them to extract the knife from the body of that opponent before establishing dialogue. So I think the aim here is to sow doubt within the mind of the Iranian nation, as well as use that to their advantage somehow in the upcoming midterm congressional elections.
Rouhani described the sanctions as psychological warfare designed to sow division among Iranians. Trump claimed in a tweet that biting sanctions on Iran are for world peace and warned, quote, anyone doing business with Iran will not be doing business with the United States. Apple, Facebook, YouTube, and other online platforms took aim Monday at conspiracy theorist Alex Jones and his internet content, arguing they were forced to remove his material because of policy violations and hate speech. After YouTube deleted Jones' content, it said, this account has been terminated for violating YouTube's community guidelines. Blaming, quote, globalists and the Chinese, and skipping over his violation of policies on graphic violence and hate speech, Jones urged Trump to make his content ban a campaign issue ahead of the 2018 midterms because it's, quote, the right thing to do. Tuesday is Election Day. It's primary day in Kansas, Missouri, Washington State, and Michigan. And in Ohio, there's a special election to replace former Representative Pat Tiberi. Republicans have held that seat for the past 35 years. Trump has gone all in for State Senator Troy Balderson. In the latest polls, Democrat Danny O'Connor is running in a dead heat. The winner of that race will serve out the term of retired Republican Patrick Tiberi, and both O'Connor and Balderson will face off again in November. Both parties agree that Democrats won the early vote, returning more absentee ballots than Republicans in a district where the president's party has usually begun with a lead. The Mendocino Complex fire is now the largest wildfire in modern California history, as the two fires that began burning through Northern California late last month grew into a massive inferno that has more than doubled in size in the past 4 days and burned through an area almost the size of Los Angeles. And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a donation. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro survived an alleged assassination attempt last weekend. Government officials claim assailants detonated drones packed with explosives near Maduro as the increasingly besieged president spoke at a military parade. He escaped unharmed. Little is known for sure about Saturday's attack, though a Miami-based group known as Soldados de la Flanela, or T-shirt soldiers, has claimed responsibility. In the past year and a half, Maduro's Supreme Court justices have also faced a helicopter attack by a rogue police officer, and Maduro himself dodged a failed coup plot in May. Daniel Hellinger is a professor of international relations at Webster College in St. Louis and says the frequent attacks against Maduro show the president's weakness.
Maduro looks more vulnerable, and the videos showing soldiers scattering as the two alleged bombs went off doesn't really speak very well for the security forces themselves.
Moments after the alleged drone explosions, rows of troops who had been arranged directly in front of Maduro ran away instead of rushing to the president's defense or toward the site of the attack. Javier Corrales is a professor of political science at Amherst College and has written extensively on Venezuela.
Almost everything that we observed reveals, more so than a president in jeopardy, a security system that is very incompetent.
Corrales said Maduro will likely play up the threat of terrorism and paint opponents as extremists, a distortion of their true aim of holding Maduro to account for possible crimes against humanity.
What this opposition wants, its dream world, is to depose Maduro and arrest Maduro and have Maduro be tried and be asked to respond to all the injustices.
Luke Vargas, New York.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. You know what I do? Just a scant bit of Hungarian hot paprika. Yes, indeed, it does. It makes all the difference. Well, we begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 61 degrees. We're going to be a bit warmer today. We should be in the low 100s, 102, 103. It'd be nice if it was only 101. We still, we're going to be in a heat advisory because of that. And for some reason, that supersedes the unhealthy air quality, which is also on an advisory. But you have to dig for that one because right now, the heat advisory takes precedent over the unhealthy air advisory. The winds right now are about 1 to 2 miles per hour. I'd say less than a mile per hour, actually, out of the southwest. They will be shifting out of the northwest in just a couple of hours, and then they'll be at their regular clip of 5 to 10 miles per hour. Then shifting later on today into this evening out of the north-northwest. Not much of a shift. But maintaining that clip of 5 to 10 miles per hour, and we should be the same tomorrow with the winds, though tomorrow is going to be even warmer. Should be about only 106, 107. Thank you very much. Oh, God. Well, it looks like dry conditions will continue, though it's a bit muggy out there, 75% humidity right now. Grass pollen is moderate in the region. That unhealthy air quality index I mentioned is at 169 parts per million. And it will go up. The daytime UV index is still rated very high, though only at 8 instead of 9. And that's because visibility is down to only 4 miles. Because of, a bit of moisture, floating moisture droplets in the sky mixed with smoke, and it's mostly smoke. All right. Okay, and that's what we are. Oh, I'm sorry. High pressure still dominates the region, and it is rising at 29.9. Let me start that over again. At 29.94 inches. There we go. Thank you very much. Oh, you want to know where the overcast ceiling is? At 2,400 feet. Well, that's what they say. Okay, well, weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. That's my P-tape, okay? Just so you know. Sometimes they pop. Sometimes I keep them from popping. London is 69 degrees with a rain shower, and with that rain shower, they also have a flood advisory in London. Paris, France is 97 and partly cloudy with a heat advisory. Rome, Italy is 89 degrees and fair, and they have a heat advisory coming up for them. Kiev is 78 and fair. Kabul is 86 and fair, which is drone flying weather. I'd stay away. Oh, and you know what? Maduro still maintains that, he just survived a drone attack. And we speculated it was a gas explosion. Well, they got the pictures of the drones somehow. But there was still a gas explosion, too. Yes, so those of you out there in Kabul, please don't have a wedding party. It'll be raining drones, even though it's fair. Hong Kong is 79 and fair. Tokyo is 71 and cloudy, and it looks like they have a thunderstorm advisory that could knock out their infrastructure. Oh, my gosh. Sydney, Australia is 50 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 51 degrees and partly cloudy, and they have a smoke advisory for unhealthy air as well. And New York is 83 degrees Fahrenheit, sunny, with a heat advisory. Well, I always tell people stay cool as you can, because nothing is cooler than a New Yorker. How do you like them apples? Okay, that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Starting off here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, is an article by Philip Smith out of Independent Media Institute. Now, you know that police officers have discretion, and it's just a shame that this particular one didn't when she had arrested a 80-year-old great-grandma because the 80-year-old great-grandma's cannabis card had been expired for just about 2 weeks. Now, that's the letter of the law, lady. We're going to show you who's boss. This is all about compliance. And, I guess maybe someone not knowing the law, and they are the law enforcers. Isn't that frightening? A Clare County, Michigan sheriff's deputy arrested an 80-year-old grandmother for small-time pot possession after going to her home on an unrelated matter and smelling weed. Well, I would suggest great-grandma, should maybe get some gummies instead. They don't smell up the house. And it's probably a lot better, trust me, maybe smoke isn't the best thing for she may not be suffering from CPOD. But, I don't know, maybe a non-smoking type thing might be better from now on. The grandma, Dolores Saltzman, is a medical marijuana patient. Medical cannabis patient. The Netroots Radio Style Manual says, do not use the M word because it is freighted in racism. And even though somebody got into an argument with me, well, no one's using it as racist now. I suppose a bunch of people going around using the N-word like Enterhead out there, where out in Texas, No, they don't mean it as racist. Yeah, well, it's still freighted in racism, so give me a break. Okay, well, she was a medical cannabis patient whose card had expired just for about 2 weeks. She spent a night in jail and had to deal with a court case because the deputy's zero-tolerance approach to cannabis precluded a sensible resolution to the matter. As local TV station Fox 17 reported, on the evening of June 13th, Deputy Ashley Grunow knocked on Saltzman's door. She was trying to find Saltzman's granddaughter to return a lost phone and ID. Things went haywire when Deputy Grunow smelled cannabis from the front porch. The deputy asked who the pot belonged to, and Saltzman explained it was hers and that she was a medical cannabis patient. Deputy Grunow then searched the house, seizing several pipes, 4 joints, and a purple jar with a small amount of cannabis. Saltzman said the total amount of cannabis seized was less than an eighth. Well, Deputy Grunow then handcuffed Saltzman, placed her in a patrol car, and took her to jail, where the arthritic grandmother spent a long night. Well, Saltzman and her son do credit the cannabis with saving her life. It helped her appetite when she was sick, helped her heal after surgeries, and eases her pain from health conditions. So she says she went public with her story in the hope it will help others. That's what I want people to do. Don't be ashamed of something that's going to make you feel better. The deputy was overzealous, her son, Mark Saltzman, said. I just thought it was absolutely ridiculous to put her through this like that. They could have just given her a ticket and just show us your card later. Reapply for your card, show us this, and then drop the charges. And that's exactly what Clare County Prosecutor Michelle Ambrosati has said, and largely agreed with Saltzman. While she said a possession of cannabis charge was justified because of the expired card, she added, however, our goal is to ensure that individuals who utilize medical cannabis are doing so legally. As such, Mrs. Saltzman was encouraged to obtain her card, and if she did so, the case would be dismissed. And she did obtain her medical cannabis card, and the case was dismissed. Clark County Sheriff John Wilson did not comment on whether his deputy should have arrested Saltzman and said he agreed with the prosecutor's decision to dismiss the case after she renewed her medical cannabis card but stuck to his guns on Saltzman's criminality. This person was illegally in possession of cannabis.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Eddie Baird of Think Progress brings us this last offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, it looks like Democrats aim to reach a new kind of swing voter. From Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to Michelle Obama, Democrats are making a push to simply get people to show up at the polls. Yeah, a new kind of swing voter, folks. I'll just cut to the chase. Are those people who have not voted. The path to a progressive majority is not about convincing Republicans or even independents to vote for Democrats. It's about a different kind of swing voter. Ocasio-Cortez says our swing voter is not red to blue. Our swing voter is the voter to the non-voter to the voter. It's an idea that she expressed in an interview on CNN while campaigning for gubernatorial candidate Abdul El-Sayed recently. I don't think that swing voters decide based on how much a candidate has to run to the middle the most, Ocasio-Cortez said. I know people who are swing voters, and when I think about how they decide, they don't say, oh, I'm voting for this person because they became the most Republican out of the whole race to earn my vote. Expanding the electorate is the path, she said. And she made similar remarks at the Netroots Nation over the weekend. And even on Monday, former First Lady Michelle Obama announced that she plans to hit the road on a voter registration drive this fall. Sometimes it's easy to forget all the work it took to get the Voting Rights Act passed. Michelle Obama said in a video posted on Twitter yesterday, all the organizing and marching, all the volunteers who registered voters, all the folks who, even if they knew they'd be turned away at the polls, stood up time and time again for their right to vote. Then the First Lady continued, today we want to honor their legacy and continue their work to ensure that every eligible American casts their vote, work that is far from finished. And as The Atlantic noted on Sunday, one big group Democrats hope to mobilize in 2018 and beyond is the 4 million voters who supported President Barack Obama in 2012 but did not vote in 2016. And that should be our work. Register them to vote. All right, we're at the end of our broadcast period for the day, but Netroots Radio, of course, broadcasts on. And we will visit with you tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. And do stay tuned to Netroots Radio for the rest of the day through the night until tomorrow, when we will visit with you in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre, Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.